You were always the backup son, she said. Her voice didn't even waver, flat, casual, like she was giving the weather forecast. My own mother. She stirred her tea like she hadn't just stabbed me clean through the ribcage. Sugar, milk, and maternal apathy. Don't take it personally, Ethan. Your brother just fit the mold better. The mold. That invisible plaster cast my family had always kept hidden behind their polite smiles and backhanded compliments. Good grades, Ethan, but your brother's got real leadership instincts. You're thoughtful, Ethan, just a little soft, don't you think? You're always there when we need you. Thank God at least one of you isn't chasing his own tail. Right. I wasn't chasing anything. I was just cleaning up after the messes no one wanted to admit were theirs. Then came the cherry on top, my dad. The same man who taught me how to ride a bike by yelling at me from the porch. The one who only spoke in lessons, never in love. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. He handed my brother, Jared, the keys to a brand new Tesla Model X, matte black, top trim, gleaming like it had been born from a Bond film. You earned it, he said, clapping Jared's back with the kind of proud force usually reserved for war heroes and sports legends. You're worth it. I stood there holding a gift bag with a mug that said world's best dad and 2 tickets to a baseball game we never got to attend. You can park it next to mine, Jared said to my dad, grinning. Finally part of the club. And then, God help me, then came Emma, my fiancée. The one person I thought I could fall into when the world pulled out the rug. The one who once told me I made her feel safe. The one I was 2 months away from marrying. She leaned in while they were all laughing, my mother, my father, Jared, some half-drunk uncle who didn't even remember my name, and whispered it like it was some tragic confession. You're sweet. But he's a man. I froze. Not just at the words, but at the way she said man, like it was a title. Like I'd been walking around with an honorary badge all these years, and now she was revoking it. They all laughed louder after that. Not at me, I think. Not directly. But they didn't need to. The silence from me was the punchline. I packed that night. Not out of rage. Not yet. Rage is for people who still want a seat at the table. No, I packed like a man clearing out a condemned house. Methodical. Measured. I took only what mattered. My laptop, my journals, the duffel I used in college. I left the ring on the nightstand next to her sleeping frame. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, my phone rang. Unknown number. A voice on the other end, deep, unfamiliar, with the edge of someone who didn't waste words. Ethan Sterling? Yes. We need someone with your skill set. Quiet job. High stakes. Well paid. You interested? I didn't ask how they got my number. I didn't ask why now. I just said, send me the details. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. They didn't just lose a son. They didn't just lose a fiancé. They lost the only one who knew where the cracks were buried. Who watched? Who remembered? Who cataloged every careless insult, every condescending pat on the head, every backhanded compliment passed off as tough love. And I didn't have to burn the house down. All I had to do was walk away and wait for the termites to do their work. They'd laugh less when the walls started collapsing. They'd wonder why everything felt colder, quieter. And when they finally realized who had held it all together, not with ego or charm, but with the invisible glue of loyalty, they'd reach out to pull me back in. But I won't be there. That call wasn't just an opportunity. It was an answer. And they'll never hear my voice again. You ever realize the moment you stopped existing in someone's life? Not physically, you're still showing up, sitting across the table, nodding through conversations, but emotionally? Spiritually? Invisibly? That was me, long before I walked out the door. Long before my mother's backup son, line, and my dad's Tesla keys found their rightful heir. Looking back now, the signs weren't subtle. They just didn't think I'd notice. But I notice everything. I'd been the observer all my life. The quiet one. The listener. While Jared played quarterback and Emma gave TED Talks on charisma over cocktails, I stood back and took notes. Not for revenge, back then, anyway, but because I thought if I could just understand the world, I could survive it. Turns out, I was studying the wrong syllabus. I caught the first real crack 2 months before the Tesla scene. Emma came home late, again. Said she had drinks with a vendor. She didn't smell like wine. She smelled like someone else's cologne and chlorine. Pool water. A rooftop bar maybe? I asked how it went. She smiled too quickly. Fine, she said, kicking off heels that were 2 inches higher than anything I'd ever seen in her closet. Don't be jealous. I wasn't. Not yet. Just awake. I noticed her phone started staying face down. She used to hand it to me to order takeout or look up directions. Now, if I so much as reached for it, her eyes sharpened like a wolf guarding raw meat. Then Jared started coming around more. My golden brother, with his dumb, perfect jawline and voice that made every room lean in. He and Emma started laughing at things I didn't understand. Inside jokes. Whispers during family dinners. They claimed it was just banter, but I saw the way she touched his arm when she laughed. And how he didn't flinch. The worst part? They didn't even hide it that well. That's when I started taking notes. Again, I installed a data vault on my laptop. Began forwarding odd messages to myself from our shared smart home account. Scheduling quirks, strange door unlock logs at 2 a.m., deleted voice memos I recovered from the cloud. One night while she slept, I found a video she forgot to delete. Her in our bathroom mirror, lips redder than usual, dressed tighter than anything I bought her. Whispering into the camera. He's asleep downstairs. You've got 10 minutes. I didn't finish watching it. I didn't need to. You might think that's when I snapped. Threw things. Woke her up and screamed questions she'd lie through anyway. But no. That was the night I wrote a new version of myself. The quiet one was gone. That next morning, I smiled. Made her coffee. Kissed her cheek like nothing had changed. I wasn't Ethan the backup anymore. I was Ethan the ghost. And ghosts haunt silently. The call came through again. Same strange number. This time, the voice had instructions. Use the name Cormac. Show up alone. Downtown. 11 p.m. Bring nothing you can't burn. I didn't hesitate. I put on a hoodie, left my wedding watch on the dresser, and drove to an abandoned warehouse on 3rd and Fillmore. The place reeked of rust, oil, and old plants. 3 men waited. None of them smiled. You worked for Sterling Industries, one said. He was the oldest, mid-60s, hawkish, with eyes that had seen too much war or too much Wall Street. Probably both. Until it was sold behind my back. I replied. Good. You know betrayal. That's useful. What's the job? We don't want you to take down a company, another one said. He was younger, lean, dressed like someone who preferred silence over suits. We want you to build something they'll never see coming. They handed me a flash drive. On it, data logs, financial trails, a dozen emails forwarded from someone inside Apex Tech, the company that bought out my family's legacy. And suddenly it clicked. This wasn't just a job. It was an inheritance in disguise. Apex Tech had buried secrets. Ugly ones. IP theft. Insider trading. Prototype manipulation. And thanks to my father's signature on the sale agreement, Sterling Industries' good name was now the front line of a massive fraud case waiting to erupt. They thought they bought the brand, but they also bought the dirt. And I knew exactly where it was buried. Back home, Emma was asleep again, dreaming sweetly, no doubt, of a life where I stayed small, forgiving, blind. I stood at the doorway for a long time, watching her. Then I whispered something I knew she wouldn't hear, not yet. You're right. He's a man, but I'm a storm. And storms don't knock. They tear the roof off. It's a strange thing, watching the people who claim to love you live their lives like your worth was a rounding error. But stranger still is how clear the world becomes once you stop begging for clarity from people who thrive on fog. After I got that flash drive from the warehouse, I drove for hours, just me, the hum of the engine, and a cold awareness settling in like winter frost on the back of my neck. Everything was falling into place. The betrayals. The silences. The strange late-night meetings that smelled more like imported whiskey and guilt than client dinners. My father's sudden sale of the company. My brother's hero treatment while I was handed a participation ribbon for existing. And now, Apex Tech. They bought Sterling Industries not just for its name, but for what it could cover. Like a white tuxedo over a bruised body. They didn't realize that somewhere in the attic of that house they'd gutted, I was still pacing, holding the blueprints in my hand. I was the historian of this family. The archivist. The one who remembered. They all laughed at me for majoring in systems engineering instead of MBA fast tracks. For studying code and process and pressure points. But the thing about pressure is, when you apply it slowly, precisely, it doesn't crack things. It shapes them. And I was about to reshape everything. First step, vanish without disappearing. I didn't quit my job. Didn't ghost the family. Didn't even cancel the wedding. No, I played my part. Sent Emma the final RSVP numbers. Pretended to let her pick the napkin colors. Smiled while she showed me a venue she and Jared had accidentally visited when he was in town. I nodded. Because fire doesn't warn the forest before it spreads. In the meantime, I set up a new identity. Not the fake ID kind. I'm talking corporate identity, digital shell companies. A Delaware LLC named Orpheus Echo because, poetic as it sounds, I intended to drag this betrayal straight through hell and make sure it screamed on the way back up. Orpheus Echo had one mission: to absorb the confidential data Apex didn't want anyone to find. Thanks to the flash drive and a bit of quiet backdoor coding into Apex's DevOps server, they never revoked my Sterling credentials. Rookie mistake. I had everything I needed: prototype schematics, patents they didn't own, and a slew of internal memos trying to cover up a component failure in their flagship energy grid model. A failure that, if replicated in real time, could take down half of Phoenix, Arizona's municipal grid. Oops. And who would get blamed for that? Sterling Industries, my father's once proud house. Unless someone warned the right people first. Unless someone revealed the truth. But not yet. Emma noticed a change in me. Not the obvious kind. I still held her hand when we crossed streets. Still kissed her shoulder before bed. But something in my silence unnerved her. My eyes, maybe. I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking through her. One night she pulled me into the kitchen, wine glass half empty, voice soft and breathy like she was trying to seduce the old version of me back into existence. Babe, you've been distant lately. Cold. I wiped the dish. Set it on the rack. Have I? Yes. I mean, God, are you even excited for the wedding? I dried my hands, walked up behind her, placed a hand gently on the small of her back. Every time I look at you, I said softly, I'm reminded how important this moment is. She smiled. But what I didn't say was which moment. The wedding? Or the day she realized I'd been preparing to obliterate everything she thought she controlled. Jared, predictably, started getting cocky. He called one afternoon, voice slathered in the same faux sibling tone he'd used since childhood. Mom says you've been quiet. You good, bro? Better than ever, I said. Just thinking about legacy. Legacy? He laughed. Dude, don't go all Shakespeare on me. Don't worry, I replied. You'll understand when Act 5 rolls around. By the end of the month, Orpheus Echo had quietly acquired a 3% share in Apex Tech. Nothing major. Just enough to request specific board meeting minutes through a proxy agent. I also leaked a redacted version of the energy grid failure report to a journalist in Chicago. Not enough to go viral. Just enough to make someone in Apex sweat. They'd spend weeks trying to track down the leak, never realizing it came from a company they'd never heard of, owned by a man they thought they broke. Meanwhile, I sent Emma flowers. Blood red roses. The card read, to the woman who made me stronger than I ever wanted to be. She posted it on Instagram with a caption about romance and trust. Trust. Cute. The storm hadn't hit yet, but the clouds were gathering. And when it came, it wouldn't scream or howl. It would land like silence. Heavy. Absolute. Irrevocable. Because sometimes revenge isn't a weapon. Sometimes it's a mirror. And they were about to see themselves, clearly, for the first time. Emma found the folder at 3:17 a.m. That's when she couldn't sleep, claimed the AC was too cold, or maybe her conscience finally kicked up enough static to keep her from drifting off. I was in the study, working. Or pretending to. I'd left my laptop open on purpose. Not logged in, of course. That would have been sloppy. But just open enough, screen on, like I'd stepped away in the middle of something important. Just a taste. A folder sat dead center on the desktop. Archive, for review. She thought I didn't notice her behind me. Bare feet on hardwood. Breath held. The way people breathe when they know they're doing something wrong but still want to believe they're the victim. I kept reading a book. Old hardcover, The Art of War. A little on the nose, but what can I say? I'm a sucker for poetic timing. She hovered behind the chair. Then, the soft click of the mouse. Inside the folder? A teaser. A few things I wanted her to see. Not everything, just enough to make the perfect storm start spinning in her gut. Emails from Apex Internal. A PDF labeled Sterling Risk Memo. A chat log from someone named Gideon.L saying, if this goes public, the Sterling name's finished. And anyone attached to it. One spreadsheet had a list of IP addresses, one of which I knew she'd recognize, our home IP. Traced to Orpheus Echo. She gasped. I turned a page in my book. Couldn't sleep? I asked calmly, without looking up. There was a long pause. Too long. Then, casually, I just needed water. Help yourself. There's cold brew in the fridge, too. Another pause. The kind thick with realization. Ethan, what is this stuff? Finally looked at her. Tired eyes. Hair messy. That silk robe that used to mean something, but now felt like a costume. A uniform for a role she stopped playing honestly a long time ago. Oh, that. I nodded toward the screen. Just a few loose ends. Family things. Why is our IP? Why are you? She trailed off. I stood. Slowly. Closed the laptop. Emma, I said, you remember when you said I was sweet? She blinked. Of course. And when you said Jared was a man? Her mouth opened. Closed. I stepped closer, let my voice drop an octave. Do I seem sweet now? She flinched. Good. Let it sit. Let the weight of it crawl under her skin. Let her imagination do the heavy lifting. I don't know what you're doing, she finally whispered. Sure you do, I said. That's what scares you. Then I kissed her forehead like a priest giving last rites, and walked past her, out of the room. That morning, she was gone. Left early. No goodbye. Not even a text. Just a half-eaten slice of toast on the counter and a lingering scent of doubt. I checked my phone. She'd called Jared. Twice. Perfect. By noon, I had what I needed from the Apex servers. I'd scraped the last of the whistleblower emails. The names, the dates, the offshore accounts. Jared's, too. Turns out little brother was tied to Apex more than just socially. He'd been funneling consulting payments through a shell company registered in the Caymans. The same company Dad helped set up. The same one Mom claimed was a charity. Their empire was a house of cards on a windy hill. All I had to do now was breathe, and the whole thing would come crashing down. At 6:42 p.m., Emma came home. Makeup flawless. Hair curled. Red dress. The one I bought her when I got my first real paycheck from Sterling R&D. She only wore it when she wanted something. You okay? I asked, flipping a page in my notebook. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over, sat beside me, and placed her hand on mine. I saw the folder. I nodded. I don't understand half of it. But she looked away. You've been planning something. Something big. Observation skills finally kicking in? I said dryly. She flinched again. Good. She tried a different tactic. Ethan, I know I've been distant, confused, but we don't have to be. I laughed. Loud. Sharp. The kind of laugh that makes people uncomfortable in nice restaurants. She blinked. Emma, you're not confused. You're cornered. Ethan. No. I stood. You're scared, and now you're thinking maybe it's time to come home to the safe option. The sweet guy. The backup plan. I walked past her, opened the fridge, pulled out a beer. But here's the thing, I said, twisting the cap. I'm not the backup anymore. I'm the reckoning. And then I handed her a small envelope. Inside? A copy of her burner phone's chat log with Jared. The photos. The hotel reservations. The screenshot of her ordering lingerie on his Amazon account. Her hands trembled. I'm not sending these to anyone, I said. Yet. She looked up. Then, why? I tilted my head. Because I want you to feel what it's like to live under glass. Every move watched. Every step calculated. To wonder, day after day, when the hammer is going to fall. I leaned in close. Close enough to smell her perfume. The one I used to love. And it will, Emma. I smiled. But not today. Emma didn't sleep that night. She tossed. Turned. Got up to drink water twice. Opened the blinds. Closed them again. Checked her phone like it held a lifeline. Like a message from Jared would somehow make this whole thing a bad dream. Me? I slept like a baby. Because babies sleep best when they know they've wrecked the house and no one's figured out how to rebuild it yet. When I woke, she was gone again. Her side of the bed was cold, empty, and carefully made. That was her new move, making the bed like it somehow erased the truth of who she'd shared it with in her mind. As if crisp sheets could iron out betrayal. But I wasn't interested in memory anymore. I was interested in momentum. 2 hours later, Emma did exactly what I predicted. She ran to Daddy. Not her real father, mind you. Her other one, Richard Calloway. Chairman of Calloway and Bly, Legacy Money, and an Apex board member with fingers and more pies than a state fair judge. I know this because I watched them. The parking structure off Pine and 12th had a perfect vantage point. Tinted windows, coffee in hand. A discreet little drone hovering nearby for high-res audio capture. She met him at his office. Corner room, ivory panels, polished floors that cost more than most people's annual rent. And I watched her cry. Real tears, too. She always had that talent, could summon sympathy like a magician pulls scarves from sleeves. She fed him some blend of half-truths and helpless damsel. He nodded, kissed her forehead. They hugged too long. And that's when I knew. The war had gone upstairs. Perfect. Let the big dogs come sniffing. I had bones to bury. Later that afternoon, I dropped the first stone into the still water. A package anonymous arrived at Jared's loft. Inside, a single USB and a printed photo. Emma, in that red dress, sitting on Jared's lap at a rooftop bar, his hand disappearing somewhere it had no business being. Attached note. Just a taste. You'll want to behave now. It was never about shocking him. No, Jared was a narcissist. He wouldn't panic. He'd plan, which is exactly what I needed. A desperate man makes mistakes. A desperate golden boy? He digs his own grave. He just thinks he's building a stage. Meanwhile, I sent a different kind of package. To my parents. A white envelope. No return address. Inside? A wedding invitation. Handmade. Gold foil lettering. Very tasteful. Ethan and Emma Sterling invite you to celebrate their union. Location: Black Hollow Estate. Date: October 17th. At first glance, normal. Elegant. Even. Until they read the fine print. Dress code: masks mandatory. Theme: the truth always shows. I wanted them to read it over dinner. I wanted my mother to scoff and roll her eyes. I wanted my father to grunt something about how masks were for cowards. I wanted them both to realize, too late, that this wasn't a ceremony. It was a reckoning. Because that estate? Black Hollow? It belonged to me now. Bought it through Orpheus Echo last month. Used a fake holding group in Luxembourg to route the purchase. Emma didn't even know. It wasn't on Zillow. Not on public records. Remote. Secluded. Cameras in every corner. Hidden mics in the chandeliers. And on that day, everyone would come. The family. The investors. The enemies dressed as friends. And they would toast to love, oblivious that the room was wired for confessions, truth bombs, and final acts. But first, I had one last test to run. I walked into Jared's gym, the one he loved bragging about. He was there, of course, shirtless, posing in the mirror like a Greek statue with Wi-Fi. Hey, man, I said. Mind if we talk? He tensed. Fake smiled. Yeah, sure, bro. Bro. It always came out like a weapon when he said it. I looked him dead in the eye. You and Emma, something I should know? He blinked. The right response would have been outrage. Denial. Anger. Instead, he tilted his head, smirked. Come on, Ethan. Don't be that guy. You and I were different animals. That was all he said. But it was enough. He thought he won. He thought I was bluffing. And that's exactly why this would work. As I left, I passed a young trainer, maybe 22. Fresh, optimistic. He smiled politely. Said, "You okay, man?" I smiled back. Never better. Because some weddings are about joining lives. Mine? Mine was about closing chapters. The week the invitations went out, silence fell over the chessboard. No angry calls. No confrontations. Not even a passive-aggressive group text from Mom. That's how I knew the message hit its mark. Because when people with power go quiet, it means they're regrouping, not retreating. They were afraid to make the first move. They were waiting to see if this was theater. Or war. I'd written it like a play. Every name on that guest list? Cast and crew. The ones who laughed at me, dismissed me, manipulated me, they all got center stage. And they'd be walking into the set I built with my own hands, thinking they were coming for cake and champagne. But they were coming for truth. Because here's what no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't end when they lie to your face. It ends when you stop pretending you didn't hear them the first time. I drove to Emma's childhood home that Friday. Not to see her. To see her mother. Now there's a piece of work. Vivian St. James, high society queen, master manipulator, owner of 6 Italian greyhounds and zero guilt. She was the one who once looked me straight in the face over Christmas brunch and said, "You've got such kind eyes, Ethan. Shame there's nothing behind them." But this time, I didn't come with gifts. I came to deliver the only thing that truly rattles people like her, knowledge that she no longer has control. Her estate was all manicured hedges and faux humility. The kind of house designed to look expensive but approachable, like wealth with a conscience. She opened the door herself. Mistake number 1. "Ethan," she said, I scanning the driveway. "Is Emma with you?" "No." "Then, what brings you here?" I held up a box. "Just wanted to deliver this personally." She stepped aside. Warily, we sat in the parlor. The same room she'd once told Emma, while I was in earshot, "Sweetheart, you're young. You don't have to settle. Men like Ethan are good for the first draft, not the final cut." I never forgot that line. Now I was the editor. "Is this about the wedding?" she asked, eyeing the box like it was ticking. "In a way," I said, setting it gently on her marble table. She opened it. Inside, a series of documents. Tax filings, property records, emails, photocopies of vacation receipts, every single one detailing her secret. See, while Emma had been hiding her affair with Jared, Vivian had been busy laundering funds through a nonprofit foundation, St. James Literacy for Girls. Very noble. Too bad the girls never saw a dime. Instead, it went to offshore vacations. Renovations on a chalet in Chamonix. A $400,000 jewelry bill listed under youth engagement. And she thought no one would ever connect the dots. Until her daughter's soft, forgettable fiancé showed up with every receipt. Her face drained of color. Just a twitch. Barely there. But I saw it. You're bluffing, she said. Am I? I replied, handing her a second envelope. This one smaller. Inside was a USB drive. And a note. One copy sent to IRS. One to Boston Globe. This one's for you. I stood. You know what the wedding is really about, don't you? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Good, I said. Then I won't need to explain the dress code. She followed me to the door. Ethan, she said quietly, why are you doing this? I paused. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I had too many. Because when I was 10, my mom told me I was the peacemaker, that I should be proud of being the one who kept things from falling apart. I turned, locking eyes with her. I'm done being the glue. Let it all break. And I walked away. Back at Black Hollow, the estate was ready. The staff I hired weren't caterers. They were surveillance experts. The decorators weren't florists. They were acoustic engineers and facial readers. The place wasn't set for a celebration. It was set for a trial. And the guests? They didn't know they were walking into their own confessions. Emma tried to talk to me again that night. Knocked gently on the study door. I just want to understand, she said. Understand what? Why you're different. I didn't look at her. I'm not different, I said. I'm just awake. She stepped closer. Are we really doing this wedding? I closed my laptop. Turned slowly. Oh yes, I said. It'll be unforgettable. Then I handed her a new dress bag. Custom tailored. Midnight blue. Silk. Wear this, I said. It'll match the occasion. She looked confused. Occasion. I smiled. Revelation. October 17th arrived with a sunrise so pristine it could have been painted by liars. The sky wore its best shade of innocent blue, and the trees, burnished by autumn, stood like silent witnesses, unaware or uncaring of what was about to happen beneath them. Black Hollow Estate stood ready. From the outside, it looked like something out of a bridal magazine. White chairs perfectly aligned on either side of a rose petal aisle. Crystal chandeliers hanging in the reception hall, glinting just so. Champagne chilling in silver buckets. A live quartet warming up by the gazebo. It looked like love. It felt like Judgment Day. The guests started arriving around noon. My mother showed up first, in a navy dress 2 sizes too tight and a scowl 2 decades too old. She gave me that strained, brittle smile that women wear when they know their kingdom's in trouble but haven't yet accepted it. My father stood beside her, straightening his tie like he was preparing for a press conference. I scanning the property like he was appraising it. Like he owned it. He didn't. But I let him believe it. One last time. Emma arrived next. And to her credit, she wore the midnight blue dress. It clung to her like truth, unforgiving, elegant, and cold. Her eyes met mine across the lawn. Something passed between us. Not love. Not hate. Something more primal. Recognition. She knew the stage wasn't hers anymore. She was just another player. And the director was already in the booth, fingers hovering over the lights. Then came Jared. Late, of course. Always had to make an entrance. Dressed like a GQ afterthought, collar open, sleeves rolled, Rolex gleaming like a confession. He walked up to me and clapped me on the shoulder. You made it, I said flatly. Wouldn't miss it, he smirked. He handed me a silver flask. For courage. I took it. Thanks. But I've had a steady drip of that since the day you started sleeping with my fiancé. His smirk faltered, just a flicker, and then returned. You're joking. I held his gaze. He swallowed hard. And for once, he didn't have a comeback. We walked down the aisle side by side, just like we used to walk into family holidays, me carrying the weight, him carrying the charm. But today, I had something heavier than resentment. I had proof. The ceremony itself was a beautiful lie. The officiant said all the right things. Emma repeated her vows like she meant them, hands shaking just enough to pass for nerves. I repeated mine like I was reading a eulogy. And in a way, I was. The death of their illusions. At the reception, things began unraveling with elegance. First, the toasts. My father stood, cleared his throat, talked about legacy, strength, sacrifice, like he hadn't pawned mine off years ago for stock options in silence. My mother toasted Emma, called her resilient, which is how genteel women say opportunist. Then Jared stood up, drunk on gin and the sound of his own voice. He started with a joke, something about Ethan always being the careful one. Then a backhanded compliment. It's crazy to think you pulled this off, man. But hey, even quiet guys get lucky sometimes. He raised his glass. To Ethan and Emma, proof that sometimes second choices still get the girl. Laughter. Polite. Hollow. But I was already walking to the podium. I took the mic. Smiled. Thanks, Jared, I said. I'll cherish that. He sat down, smirking, oblivious. The room fell still. I'd like to say a few words, I began. Not about love. We've heard enough about that today. I'd like to talk about truth. A murmur. Good. See, weddings are interesting. They're supposed to be sacred, honest. But sometimes, they're the perfect place to tell a lie everyone's been rehearsing for years. My eyes found Emma, Jared, my parents, Vivian, Richard Calloway. I just want to thank all of you for being here. I pulled a remote from my pocket, because none of this works without witnesses. And I pressed the button. The screens behind me, originally meant to cycle a slideshow of our engagement photos, lit up. But not with kisses and smiles. No. With evidence. Video footage. Phone calls. Text message threads. Audio of Jared and Emma in hotel rooms. Of my father coaching Jared through Apex's shell company funnel. Of Vivian transferring funds from a fake literacy program. Of Richard Calloway threatening a whistleblower on a recorded line. The room went dead. Forks paused mid-air. Jaws dropped mid-toast. Emma's glass shattered in her hand. Jared turned ghost white. My mother stood up, mouthing, "What is this?" I turned to her. "This," I said calmly, "is the moment you all lose control. There's a moment, right after the bomb drops, where everything is silent. Not peaceful. Not calm. Just frozen. Like the air itself is too stunned to move." That's what the reception hall felt like after the slideshow ended. 1,000 unsaid words clogging the room like smoke. No one dared breathe, because everyone was waiting to see who'd speak first. I didn't need to. Truth had taken the microphone, and it was louder than anything I could have said. Jared was the first to crack. He stood up so fast his chair screeched backward and nearly toppled over. His hands trembled, fists clenched, that golden boy veneer crumbling in real time. "What the hell is this?" he barked. "Evidence," I said evenly. "You're bluffing. This is fake. You edited this. You." "Nope," I interrupted. "But you're welcome to try that defense in court. I hear judges love creative fiction." Emma sat frozen, mascara streaking down her cheeks, her dress stained with the blood from her palm where the shattered glass had cut her. For once, she didn't reach for drama. She didn't deny. Didn't speak. She just stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Because she hadn't. None of them had. They'd only seen the man they imagined me to be, the sweet one, the backup, the afterthought. But that version of me? He died the day I realized love isn't loyalty. It's leverage. My father stood slowly. Not with rage. Not even shame. Just disappointment. Which is ironic, considering he was the reason I ever learned how to bury things so deep. "You embarrassed this family," he said. Cold. Controlled. "No," I replied. "You embarrassed yourself. I just brought the receipts. You think this makes you powerful? Some PowerPoint revenge fantasy?" I smiled. "No, Dad. I think the SEC indictment heading your way next week makes me powerful." He flinched, subtle, but I saw it. He knew. Somewhere, deep down, he'd always known I was watching. That I'd been cataloging his lies like a librarian shelves dangerous books. I turned to my mother. She was shaking her head, lips parted in disbelief. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. "To your own family?" "Because you taught me," I said. "Every time you laughed behind my back. Every time you said Jared was the real man. Every time you looked at me like I was a placeholder. You raised me for war, Mother. You just didn't think I'd fight with silence." The guests? They didn't say a word. A few started slipping away, clutching their purses and cufflinks, eyes darting toward exits. Even the quartet had gone quiet, bows still in hand. No applause. No gasps. Just quiet judgment from the wealthy, now stuck at a wedding-turned tribunal. And I stood there, tall and whole and finally, beautifully unafraid. I walked off the stage, leaving the remote on the podium like a crown no one else had the right to wear. On my way out, I passed Emma. She didn't look up, but as I brushed by, I whispered just loud enough for her to hear. You were right. Jared's a man. I paused. But I'm a legacy. Outside, the wind had picked up. Autumn leaves swirled across the driveway like ash after a fire. Mac waited by the car, my old college roommate turned quiet co-conspirator. You sure you don't want to stick around for the cake? He asked, grinning. Let them eat regret, I muttered. He handed me a manila envelope. All sent. Apex, the IRS, Callaway's rivals, your lawyer, the press, boom. I took it, tucked it under my arm. And the house. Signed over to a veterans rehab program. Quietly. Tax deductible. Poetic. Good. Let the vultures fight over ruins. I had better things to build. As we drove off, I looked out the window at the estate, my estate, though not for long. And in the rearview mirror, I saw them all scatter. The brother. The bride. The parents who forgot the weight of a quiet son. None of them followed. They didn't know where I was going. But that was fine. Because for the first time in my life, I did. Fallout has a rhythm to it. It doesn't arrive all at once like a thunderclap. It drips. Slow. Methodical. Like a leak you pretend isn't serious until the ceiling caves in on your polished marble floors. That's exactly what happened in the days after the wedding. Funny, they still called it that. Like it was a ceremony. A celebration. Not a one-man demolition act that ripped off their masks and stapled the truth to their faces in front of their best-dressed friends. Monday morning, the SEC showed up at Apex's corporate office. Unmarked cars. Sharp suits. Federal walk-in. Quiet but visible. Right in the middle of Jared's team leader training session. They escorted him out of the glass conference room in handcuffs. No resistance. No shouting. He looked like he was in a dream. Or a coma. It hit the local papers that afternoon. Sterling scandal. Apex executive implicated in insider fraud allegations. But that was just the appetizer. Tuesday, my father got the call. His legacy fund, the one he built with his business partners, charities, and shadow LLCs, was frozen pending investigation. Investigative journalists started digging. They found the paper trail I'd buried like Easter eggs. Charities with no beneficiaries. Consulting fees paid to Jared under a pseudonym. Shell companies tied to offshore accounts in Belize, the Caymans, and a business address in Detroit that turned out to be a laundromat. He called me that night. Left a voicemail. Ethan, you've made your point. Now stop this before it gets worse. Click. No apology. No admission. Just the voice of a man who'd finally learned what it feels like when the puppet bites back. Wednesday, Emma vanished from social media. Wiped everything. Photos gone. Bio cleared. Wedding pics deleted. But screenshots? They live forever. There was one final post before she disappeared. I thought I could rewrite a story I never understood. Turns out I was never the author. Some influencer friends commented with broken hearts and praying hands. But I didn't need their pity. She wasn't grieving the loss of love. She was grieving the end of her narrative. Thursday, Vivian and Richard Callaway held an emergency press conference. Tried to spin the scandal as a rogue operation led by their former associates. Claimed ignorance. Denied wrongdoing. Poured a river of expensive words over the burning house. But it didn't work. Because buried in their foundation was a file I'd sent to a quiet, hungry journalist with nothing to lose and a career to make. 15 years of tax evasion. 3 forged signatures. 1 whistleblower audio clip. And the cherry on top? A leaked email from Vivian to Emma, dated 7 months before the wedding. Secure the marriage. He's passive. He'll never know. And even if he does, he won't do a damn thing. Oops. Meanwhile, me? I was gone. Not hiding. Gone. Off-grid. Out of reach. Let them chase shadows. I wasn't the villain in their story anymore. I was the author of the ending. Mac and I flew to Iceland. Stayed off-grid in a solar cabin built into a black rock cliff overlooking the ocean. I brought my laptop, a few hard drives, and a whiskey that tasted like silence. He asked me once, looking out at the dark sea, what now? I didn't answer right away. Just watched the horizon. The way the water moved without needing permission. Then I said, now we build something honest. Because revenge isn't the destination. It's the map that gets you home. But let's not kid ourselves, my name was in their mouths. They tried spinning it. Jared told reporters I was mentally unstable. Emma told friends I was emotionally distant. My parents leaked that I'd always felt inferior, jealous, and socially withdrawn. They made it a pity story. But stories don't matter when receipts speak louder. Because the next wave wasn't just personal. It was legal. Friday, I got the email. Subject line, Sterling versus Sterling. Case number 348, BM 117. They were suing me for slander, intellectual property theft, and calculated defamation. I laughed. Sued by the people who tried to gut me like a bonus round piñata. They thought they were walking into court. They were walking into a minefield. Because what they didn't know? I'd already hired their lawyer. And I paid him in truth. Most people fear courtrooms the way children fear the dark. Not because of what's there, but because they don't know what might be. But I didn't fear it. I welcomed it. Because unlike the polished photos and PR apologies my family loved to peddle, courtrooms don't care about image. They care about proof. And proof was something I had in spades. It started with the lawsuit, filed in a joint action by my parents and Jared, claiming I deliberately manipulated and weaponized private communications, confidential corporate data, and personal relationships to publicly defame the Sterling family name. Defame, as if the truth was an insult. The irony? Their filing included several exhibits of emails and messages that I myself had pulled from their records. The very evidence they were trying to claim was malicious. It's like someone throwing a punch and suing you for bruising their knuckles. I didn't hire a lawyer. I hired theirs. Remember the one Dad used for the Apex sale? Andrew West. Been in the family's pocket for 15 years. Turns out, loyalty only lasts until someone shows you what's beneath the rug you've been standing on. I gave West the evidence, the lies, the structure of the collapse. I didn't ask him to defend me. I asked him to witness. He accepted the case pro bono. His only request? Let me call them to the stand. I shook his hand. Gladly. The trial wasn't public at first. They tried to keep it private, protect the Sterling name, the Apex shares, Emma's dwindling reputation. But once discovery began, the judge lifted the veil. Too much money. Too many fraud trails. Too many people affected. It became a circus. Cameras outside the courthouse. Sketch artists in the gallery. Opinion pieces flying back and forth across news sites with words like betrayal, dynasty collapse, and my personal favorite, the sweet one strikes back. Emma never showed up. Smart. She was never listed as a plaintiff. But she was on every exhibit list. Every thread of emails with Jared. Every plan she co-authored with Vivian to turn our wedding into a leveraged acquisition of my name and my family's assets. She was the shadow in the margins. And now, her face was on full-page spreads of the Wall Street Journal under the headline, Marriage Fraud or Mutual Delusion? Day one of the trial, my father took the stand. He wore his favorite watch, the one he used to say only real men could earn. The same watch I bought him when I still believed approval was a currency worth chasing. He looked calm, confident, too confident, until West handed him a printout of the Apex deal contract and asked him to read Clause 14B aloud. He did. Then West asked, "Did you knowingly sell Sterling Industries with full awareness of Apex's non-disclosed financial risks as evidenced in this email from their CTO dated 6 months prior?" Dad blinked. I don't recall that email." West nodded. "Funny, because it was forwarded to your private account and replied to." The judge leaned in. My father's lips twitched. Silence. Then, "I'll need to review that." Translation, "I'm screwed." Day 2, my mother. West didn't waste time. He pulled up a voice memo, recorded from her phone, the one she forgot to disable when I accessed our family cloud. Ethan's not built for leadership. He's useful, obedient. But Jared's the one who can carry this name. "Is that your voice, Mrs. Sterling?" West asked. She hesitated, blinked at me, tried to soften it with a laugh. "Sounds like I was venting. To your tax attorney?" Her jaw locked. Day 3, Jared. Oh, this one was a gift. He strutted into the courtroom like a man who still believed charm was bulletproof. Until West played the hotel lobby footage. Emma on his arm, her hand slipping under his jacket. His whisper into her ear. "He still thinks you're marrying him. That's actually kind of sad." The courtroom didn't gasp. It groaned. A sound of collective disgust. Pity. Recognition. Jared slumped in the witness chair, shoulders caving in. That charm? Gone. That smug grin. Evaporated. He looked small, like the backup son. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't give a speech. I didn't ask for sympathy. I simply told the truth. How I grew up learning silence was safer than asking why. How I watched my family feed Jared opportunity and fed me expectations. How I spent years being the sweet one, until I realized sweetness without boundaries is just another word for target. I looked at the jury, at the judge, even at the press row behind them. I didn't burn my family's legacy, I said. I just removed the masks and let them see their own reflection. The verdict? Dismissal of the lawsuit. Immediate motion to investigate the plaintiffs for perjury and financial misconduct. And me? I walked out of the courthouse with my head held higher than it ever had been in their presence. Because for once, I wasn't the quiet one. I was the voice that ended the lie. 3 weeks passed. No cameras. No subpoenas. No phone calls from old family, friends, hoping to hear my side of the story, because now the whole damn world had heard it. And suddenly, silence. It was beautiful. I spent my mornings walking the black sand beaches of southern Iceland. Evenings were for whiskey and rebuilding my mind one word at a time. No more war rooms, no more schematics of revenge. Just quiet. Unnatural at first, like walking into a room that used to echo with screams and finding peace instead. But I earned the silence, and I wasn't going to apologize for it. Then came the letter. No return address. No perfume. No tricks. Just white paper in a plain envelope, delivered by a local courier who probably thought it was a thank you card or maybe a love note. I almost didn't open it. Then I saw the handwriting. Emma's. Still perfect. Still composed. Even now. Ethan. I know you won't write back. I don't blame you. I've had 23 days to think. To read the stories. To watch the world repaint me in the image I earned. You once asked me, back when we were still real, what scared me most. I said, being ordinary. I lied. What scared me was being invisible. Jared made me feel seen. Not because he loved me, but because he looked at me like I mattered. I didn't realize how badly I wanted to be worshipped until I realized I'd sacrificed the one person who actually saw me without needing a pedestal to stand on. You were never the backup, Ethan. You were the whole foundation. And I crushed you trying to stand taller. I hope you find peace. You deserve more than I ever gave you. I won't contact you again. I just needed to say it. D. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope. No tears. No anger. Just a dull ache, the kind you feel when a wound finally closes, but the scar it leaves still pulls tight on rainy days. It wasn't closure. Not really. Because some doors don't get to close with grace. Some just get nailed shut. Mac asked me what I wanted to do next. You've got the money. The name. The sympathy of every underdog on the internet. You could go full Batman if you wanted. I laughed. Revenge is done, I said. Now I build. He raised an eyebrow. Build what? A life. Not in their shadow. Not as the son or the fiancé or the scapegoat. I paused. A legacy without their fingerprints on it. I started with a new company. Not tech. Not finance. Truth architecture. Think whistleblower protection meets digital security consultancy. Orpheus Echo became more than a vessel for revenge. It became a refuge. For the people like me, undervalued, underestimated, used. I built systems that couldn't be gamed. Firewalls that couldn't be manipulated by backdoor family deals. Confidential vaults for the ones who had nowhere else to turn. And it caught fire. Quietly. Ethically. On my terms. Sometimes, I still get updates. Jared pled guilty to obstruction. My father's name was removed from the board of every company he once sat on. Vivian fled the country. Tax evasion will do that. And Emma? She lives in a condo in San Francisco now. Keeps a low profile. Works PR for a fashion startup. They say she doesn't date. They say she drinks red wine alone on balconies and talks to herself sometimes. I wouldn't know. Because I never looked. One night, Mac and I sat on the cabin porch watching the aurora slide across the sky. You ever think about going back? He asked. I shook my head. No point. There's nothing there to go back to. He sipped his beer. And if they reached out again? I smiled. If they reach out, I said, they'll be dialing the ghost of a man they never bothered to understand. UST when I thought the past had finally learned how to stay buried, it knocked on my door. Literally. It was a gray, icy morning. I just stepped outside to toss yesterday's ash from the wood stove, the kind of simple task that had become sacred since I'd torched the old life behind me. Then I heard it, the engine. Low. Careful. Not a tourist. A black SUV rolled up the gravel road like it was stalking something. Windows tinted. Plates local, but the kind locals didn't drive. I watched. Didn't move. It stopped 50 feet from my cabin. A woman stepped out. wool coat, gloves, messy hair bundled beneath a beanie. She looked thinner than I remembered. Humbled, even. Vivian Calloway, Emma's mother, the architect of silent deals, the high priestess of condescension. Last time I saw her, she was sweating in pearls while the courtroom burned down around her. No? She looked cold, and not just from the Icelandic wind. Ethan, she said, as if the name still tasted sour. I didn't respond. May I? No. She stood awkwardly at the edge of the drive, hands clasped, like she wasn't used to not being invited in. The silence stretched so long it started to crack. I assume this isn't a social call, I said at last. She gave a short, humorless smile. No, it's business. I raised an eyebrow. You still think you can trade with me? She pulled something from her coat, a flash drive. I came to warn you. Let me guess, I said. Apex 2.0? A phoenix rising from the ashes of your bank accounts. Her lips tightened. This isn't about me. Or Emma. Or Richard. I took a step closer, just enough to feel the tension crackle in the air between us. She held out the drive. There's a new player, she said. They're trying to trace Orpheus. Not legally. Privately. You exposed too much. Cost too many people too much money. And now they want to know how you did it, and what else you know. I stared at the drive. Didn't take it. Why would you help me? She paused. Then, quietly, because you made your point, Ethan. You won. And I know what people like them do to the ones who win in public. That hit differently. Not because I trusted her. I didn't. But because she sounded afraid. And people like Vivian only get scared when something bigger than her comes into the room. I took the drive. Didn't say thank you. Didn't need to. She got back in the SUV. Didn't ask to stay. Didn't offer a tearful apology for the way she helped her daughter betray me, or how she once called me emotionally undercooked. She just left. And for the first time, I believe she might actually never come back. Mac and I spent the next 48 hours scrubbing the drive. Encrypted files. Metadata from private VPN servers. Internal memos from a cybersecurity firm in Singapore that had been tracing blockchain transfers tied to Orpheus Echo. Nothing had been breached yet, but someone was hunting, and they weren't amateurs. The kicker? One of the folders was labeled Project Lazarus. Inside it, photos of me. Old ones. From college. From my engagement party. Even from Iceland. Ones I hadn't taken, hadn't posted, hadn't even known were possible from that distance. Surveillance-grade stuff. This isn't Fallout, Mac muttered. It's escalation. Yeah, I said, jaw tight. They don't want to sue me. He nodded grimly. They want to erase you. So we went underground again. But this time, not out of fear. Out of strategy. I wasn't going to run. But I was going to disappear on my terms. We rerouted everything. Ghosted our digital footprints. Dissolved Orpheus Echo's shell structure into something new. Something no one could trace unless I wanted them to. And while we did, I built the next version of myself. Not the sweet son. Not the quiet fiancé. Not even the avenging ghost. No. Something untouchable. Because if they thought I was dangerous when I had nothing to lose, they had no idea what I'd become now that I had everything to protect.